Right. Terribly sorry about that. Coffee took a little bit longer than I expected. I don't want to start this without coffee. Okay. Let's get started. I made a couple of changes since the stream yesterday morning or afternoon. I moved all of the. I had two separate projects for a fetcher and a parser. I moved them back into one folder because I kind of felt like, yeah, it's not. There's no real reason for those two things to be separate. And more importantly, I fixed the parser. So we previously had a problem that the parser was just taking way too long and erroring out if we had a very big log. Well, actually, it was erroring if we put the entire log into it. And it turns out that by default, the parser considers every single character in the log as a separate token, which is terrible because if you have like a log entry, an error log with one error, it can be tens of lines long and have thousands of tokens in them. So that creates an incredibly deep parsing tree, which is where it just took forever and eventually ran out of memory. So what I've had to do is put a lexer in front of it. And I've just moved all of this stuff, so it's been moved now. And what the lexer is basically a series of regular expressions, and in some cases just pattern matches. Or it has a little bit of state as well, which helped resolving some conflicts I had in my parser. So I think I've now actually managed to make a reliable parser that is a lot faster. Can parse everything without ambiguity, and can actually parse the whole log. Is that all? I think that's all. So, without further ado, let's give it a quick check. I'm really hoping that actually works now. Obviously, it wouldn't work the first time I do it. Arg. That's just because we need to make a folder for it here. There we go. And if we quickly test it, then what we get now is just a giant list of things. So we get a nice list of all of the operators that have been used, so the harmony patches. We get a list of strings for all of the errors in it. We get a nice list of mods, each with the assemblies related to it. I will need to do some cleanup for the versions, but that's not that wasn't exactly a priority. It just works, and it's a hell of a lot faster. So I'm very pleased about that. What I'd like to do today is set up the database, or more or less a data dump, because I'm pretty much just going to dump everything I get from these logs into that. And then we can sort out later how we want to set it up in terms of relations in it, indexes, maybe make some changes in it. But I just want to have a little working prototype first, so that we can build from that. Because I tend to, if you haven't noticed yet, lose track in details and spend way too much on them, way too much time on them. Fresh coffee, awesome. So a little database, and then we need to set up a working scheme to download logs. And I think I will do it for now just to download them hourly, just for testing purposes, and then later we'll set it to daily or something, and just have a check for any new logs in that period, download them, put them in the database, and then that works, and then we can fill the database. At some point off screen, I will make a thingy to get all of the logs from the past. And probably off screen, maybe on screen, don't know. We'll see how long everything takes. But before that, I want to also work on the user interface so that we can actually do something with this and start putting it online as well, maybe. So, first of all, a database. We're going to work with Docker containers because that's just easy and nice, and I know how to work with that, and I've already got the environment for that set up. So if we use Docker containers, all we kind of have to do is create a file for it, and that will be a compose file. I think we're at 3 now, actually. And that will have several services. And the first one will be Mongo, which will be our database. And that will be from an image called Mongo. And I don't know what the exact name for that is anymore. If anybody's not familiar with Docker, Docker is, yeah, what is it? I guess it's a hybrid sort of virtual machine. Sorry. The idea is that you can put an app or any set of apps or whatever, you can put them in a container, and that container includes all of the running environment for that app. So all of the dependencies it needs, all of the settings, everything you can set up in that container. You can develop on that container. You can then, if you're done with it, you can share it to other developers or whatever, and they can install it and run it and have the exact same environment you had. And you can also push it to a production server from that container. Well, in our case, just a server, because it's not like we have several different servers, but which is just nice. It's a nice containerized environment. You can have multiple different things going on without messing up your server's environment. So yeah, and then there's a lot of things that build on that ecosystem. So I've actually got it set up on my server that I can just put a new Docker image on it, run it, and if I give it a couple of environment variables for like which host name it should have and what the ports it should open, then it automatically just gets added as a subdomain on my personal domain, which is very nice once you've got it set up. Anyway, we were looking for the Mongo Docker image. Yeah, I'm gonna need a little bit more. This is really just Mongo. Oh wow, okay. And that's kind of all we need to do for that one. We may want to set up a volume to keep a persistent database at some point, but for now it's fine. We can just leave it at this testing stuff. And we want the hugslib is going to be an image. Is that a good idea? Yeah, it's gonna run as a service on that eventually, so I might as well. This will depend on Mongo. I think I need to do that as a... Not sure. We'll get errors eventually when it just goes wrong. And I think we need to link it. Link to containers in another service. Yeah. Yeah. And it also needs a link to Mongo. What that does is it allows us to just give, like normally you would give a web address as, I don't know, google.com or localhost. And this sends up a link so that we can actually just use Mongo and then do some stuff with that. So we don't have to worry about this. A good alternative to using a Docker image for Mongo would be to use an online Docker thing. Like there's or an online Mongo database. There's various providers that will give you a free tier database for free or very little money. It's probably safer. because they handle like security and everything for you. But this thing is never going to be directly exposed to the internet anyway. It's only going to be exposed through to the local apps. So theoretically it could possibly be hacked, but I don't expect it to happen. And besides, there are a lot more interesting Mongo databases that are actually open to the internet, which hackers can play with before they'll reach mine. Hopefully, maybe. And we need to build this image from that's in Huxlib. So let's just, and we'll need to create a Docker file there to actually build the image. Then later we'll add the front end here, which will actually have a web interface, and the mod manager API, which will also have a web interface. But that's far into the future. That's going to be if I add logging to mod manager so that it can call home and add data to the database as well. Okay. So then we need to create a Docker file here. This is going to work from a base image, and the base image is just going to be, let's make it Ubuntu. It doesn't need to be fancy, just a basic Ubuntu image is plenty fine. It's nice that we get intelligent, what is it, intelligent thingies for that? So that's another thing about Docker, is that it works in layers. So you start with a base image, and then any deviations you make from that base image is stored as a layer on top of that. So it's kind of a Git-like system where you only store changes instead of the actual files. Or you have to store the actual files sometimes, but mostly you store changes. That also allows you, if you have multiple images using the Ubuntu base layer, you don't need to have multiple copies of Ubuntu. You just have Ubuntu once, and then you have a couple of layers that are much smaller, and that just have the difference between these things. Anyway, we need to add our package files. From here, and it's going to, on the server, it's going into an app directory, which we will have to make. Is it create mkdir? I'll have to look that up. We're going to have to create that app there, and we're going to add them to that. Then we're going to go into okay, I need to get the reference out here, because I thought I was better at this than I was. So I know there's a way for, that's work there, that's what I was looking for, to go into the app, and there has to be a way to create folders. I can do it through a command, but that's not ideal. What's the difference between add and copy again? I'm not sure. It doesn't work that way. Copies new files from source and adds them to the file system and the image of blah 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 blah. So this is kind of the reason we're doing the package files separately, because every time we rebuild the image, it's going to look at changes and update for those changes. So if we copy everything over, it's going to look at our scripts and something will have changed in that script, and then it's going to redo all of the npm install stuff. So it's reinstalling all of the node dependencies. We don't want to do that. So we first give it the node files, tell it to install those, and then we copy our source files, which makes it much easier to do that. I feel like this is literally the same description. Okay, but it does auto-create it, so we don't need to worry too much about it. So then we're going to go there. So now any further commands we give are going to be, this is the same as CDing into it. It's just going to be relative from that path. We need to npm install, and I just realized this needs to be from node because we need to have node installed. So node is just a layer on top of, can I follow that? Yeah, sure. Node is probably just a layer on top of some version of Linux or Ubuntu as well, I don't know. Doesn't specifically tell us here. We can look at it. I guess we're using 12 because that's the current stable. There's different versions. Not sure what the normal one is, but let's assume it's this one. Yeah, okay, so it's already got a couple of build packs in it and stuff. Anyway, this gets much more complex than we have to be, so I'm not going to worry about that. The point is, this is actually, the node one is just a little extra layer on top of some kind of Ubuntu Linux distribution. We're copying the package, we're going into there, we're going to install all of the packages, and then we're going to copy everything in source. So this is going to be source, and we're going to add that to app source absolute directory, and then for now we're just going to open a shell. So we're going to say the entry point. What kind of help did it give us there? Yeah. I think this is good enough. That'll just run a bash shell. Let's find out if that actually works. This is Docker. Yeah, I think works. Needs to have the image, but that's here, right? No. Docker build requires a path. No, to break context and symlinks in Docker file path. Let's just see what that gives us. Am I naming it wrong? I thought it was .docker file, but apparently it's a different naming convention. Yeah. Okay. our little Docker container has exited because it was done. It was created successfully. And it's very quick. But okay, sure. And it was attached. The Mongo server is now running. But ours got popped basically instantly because we don't have we don't keep like we didn't like keep a connection active, so we have to force it to remain active in the background, and the simple way to do that is to say allocate a pseudo terminal. Yeah. Okay. It still exited immediately again. I was expecting this part to go quickly at least. Hey. No such file or directory. Awesome. That's why it was so quick. It didn't actually do the install bit. I'm terrible at this bit. Just try and rebuild it. No, that's still going way too quick. I don't understand why it doesn't give me an error back immediately then. I'm just quickly, I have lots of other apps that do the same kind of pattern, so I'm just quickly going to look at one of them. So this is the same kind of thing for the Reddit modlinker bot that I have. So that also has a bot with a setup, and it has the stats, so that's like a front-facing server. So here it's actually setting up the what's it called, TTS, like the SSL certificates, and it's assigning like a port number and a subdomain on it. Karel Kroes is my name, if you hadn't realized that yet. Now you know. And that's building it from either bot and stats. So let's have a look. We want to look at stats because the bot is a Python project, but the stats is also a Node project. So that should basically be the same kind of deal. So we're using Node Alpine here. Alpine is just a more lean version of Node. That's fine, that shouldn't actually make a difference. We need to do run, not CMD. Apparently that helps. Okay. Did I have quotes around that? No, I don't even have quotes around it. Okay. Right, now it's actually doing something in there. Right, I have a lot more faith in that one. Let's see if it's up still. Yep, it's up still. So we should now be able to connect to it. which I always forget to do how to do it, but the other way is to just say execute on Huxley and just open another terminal on it. Right. So we're now in the app. So this has all of the files that we added there. It has node modules. It has our packages files, so the package log and the package JSON, so we can run it from there. We can build our grammar, theoretically. Now it's going to complain about stuff again. Build our grammar. There we go. And then we can test it on here as well. Cannot open the data. Did I not add the data to this? No, I didn't. I only added the source. So we need to add the data. Wait, this is not the right. I was gonna say, that doesn't look right. That is the Docker image we used as an example. So copy and add is exactly the same thing. Honestly, I like add better then. So let's use that. Okay. Let's get out of there. To rebuild the images. Right, that was it. Okay, so now we have the data in here as well. We have the source, but we still don't have our build dist stuff. So Mkadir doesn't have a recursive. I should really just do this here. That's not an option, apparently. I know that is, though. So now it's also checking Mongo because this depends on Mongo, so it's also booting up Mongo. It should be attaching to Huxlip now. It should start get I should get console access, but apparently not. So let's just not even try to attach. We'll just detach immediately. That works. Then we can use the other way. Exec bash Huxlip bash. There we go. Got all of our stuff set up, ready to go. Build grammar. Grammar build. Test. Oh, so close. Okay, so we're getting flat is not a function again, which means that we're on an antiquated version of Node. We're on 9.2. Jesus. Can we not? We're at like 12 is the current long-time support version. 13 is the current edge. We should at least be at 12. Yeah. So we just tag it with LTS. That's probably the best idea. So that's the long-time support version. Right, so it was using a version from my local cache before, apparently. So now it's going to take a little bit longer because it will have to download. Yeah, there we go. While it's doing that, let me quickly look at the grammar and the lexer again and just go over how it's changed now. So the lexer, like I said, it's basically a bunch of regular expressions. And it has a state. So when you find a particular token, you match a particular expression, you can push a new state. In our current example, that's not really necessary if it had like an order kind of thing as well, but it doesn't. Because everything is always in the same order. We always have an order like timestamp, then we have the mods, the patches, Harmony instances, the platform used, and then the actual contents of the log file. That's always going to be the same, so we wouldn't really need to have these states, but they are still very handy to resolve ambiguity. Excuse me. So for example, a couple of like these mod names could also very easily be an assembly name. It's basically the same kind of thing. Same goes for patch names, and method names there, etc., etc., etc. So it's quite nice that you can split them up, and it makes everything much simpler in the actual grammar that we'll look at in a sec. So basically, when I see, well, the first one timestamp is just one sentence, so this is just one token. But when we reach mods, we're pushed into the mod states, and then for each mod, it actually has an assembly state as well. You can have multiple assemblies. So after the name, you go into assembly state and you check if there's an assembly. When you're done with the assembly, you pop that state, so you go back into mod state, and then you look like, oh, there's a comma behind that, which means that it might not be, it might be another assembly. And if there's not, then you pop the state again, and then you arrive I'm sorry, if you arrived at the end of it, so normally if it's just a single line break, you go to the next mod again. If you've arrived at the end of it, you pop this state, and then we go back to the main state, and we go look for patches. And then in patches, it's the same kind of thing. Again, with a couple of substates to make everything as unambiguous as possible. We can do the same thing with the grammars, but it just gets trickier, and it's a lot easier in this lexer, because this entire thing is basically a giant regex and a regular expression. So we can actually also use regular expressions and the full power of regular expressions, which is really, really, really fucking nice. So you can make monstrosities such as this. This is a file version parser. Yay. And this is just parsing the log content lines. So it can be any number of lines terminated either by a line break or the end of file, or end of the line actually. And then finally the break this is when you have multiple lines between two mods, and then it knows that, okay, or between two log entries, so you know that we have started a new log entry. This is now the bigger file actually, and this is doing most of the work. From this, it would be quite trivial to actually manually parse it, and like, because this just gives you a list of tokens. Like, it found the timestamp, it found mods, then it found the mod name, assembly, etc., etc., etc. So that would already make it a lot easier to parse. That also helps for the actual grammar, because the grammar is now also much easier. Anything you see here with a percentage in front of it is a token from the lexer. So this percentage thing, the percentage mods, is just, did I close the lexer already? No. Yeah. Is actually this token, so loaded mods. Then we create our own rule for what a mod actually is, because then we need to look at the mod names, the assembly names, assembly versions, etc. in it. And the same for patches, harmony instances, and then finally the content and log entries. Here we post-process everything again. Because we use a lexer, we don't get like the value of the token anymore as the immediate result. Instead, we get an object with some other stuff in it. So we can have the value from that object, or the text, or like what line it occurs, what the order of it is. A lot of extra meta information that you could also do stuff with if you wanted to. In our case, we're mostly just interested in the value. Then we just use a series of operations to reduce that down to something that is logical, has a nice structure, and that we can work with easily. So it's basically just an object with a timestamp, an array of mods that we found, array of patches, array of harmony instances, platform string, which 99 out of 100 times will just be an empty, or saying like this is hidden string, and finally the actual contents of the logs, which we're probably not going to do anything with for a while, because for now we're just mostly focused on the mods and the patches, but I do still want to parse the logs itself as well and see if we can get some information from those. But that's the next step. Right, we should now have a more recent version of Node. Run grammar build and test it. Right, and there we go, it works now. Yippee-ki-yay. What have we actually achieved now? Very, very little. I'll be honest about that. We need to set up a little app to dump this stuff into the database. So let's call this DB for database, and this function we're just going to call it dump. And that's going to take a log, and a log file be a log parse. That's an interface I also created in the parse line so that we have a little bit more clarity about, okay, what is actually in there and how is it structured, which is why we use TypeScript in the first place, to give ourselves help in the form of IntelliSense suggestions. So this parser is actually, well, this is helper function for the parser is mostly just the interfaces that we use, and a tiny function that creates a nearly parser with the grammar we created, gets the parse results, and there's basically 3 scenarios that we can run into. It can either error because there's it finds something that it didn't expect, in which case we'll return an error and be done with it. It can have multiple parse results, which is, hopefully we won't run into that situation, but it's entirely possible that we will at some point. I'm fairly confident that we won't actually. Or it can find no parsings, which I'm not sure how can even happen in our situation. That you find no parsings without erroring. Theoretically, with an empty string. Maybe if you have a partial match, I guess. If you only have like the first part of a log file, you might get no parsings because it never errors, because it never finds something unexpected, but it also never finishes parsing. I think that's theoretically possible, but hopefully we'll never run into it. Then we take a moment to transform the timestamp into a moment timestamp so that we can actually do something with it, and then just return it. The fetcher we looked at before, it's basically the gist. It's a wrapper around the GitHub gists API or API, and a tiny wrapper to a tiny function to just save them to disk with a random name, basically. We're not going to use the save to disk anymore in the future. I just wanted to do that to get a little bit of test data. Wow, words are hard today. I'm really not having a... Oh well. Okay. We have our database. We're going to create a little dump function that's going to be void. And this is going to be asynchronous because we are dealing with database operations. Really? Sure, yeah, that makes sense. You're not returning anything, so why wait? It can still be asynchronous in there though, I hope, right? No, it'll just have to be a promise void. I can change it later to like a success or failure from the data dump. Asynchronous. I'm debating with myself whether I want to use Mongoose or not. So when you're using the Mongo database, Mongo is a NoSQL or NoSQL, I've heard it pronounced sometimes, database, which means that you don't necessarily have like predefined tables and columns and all that kind of stuff. You can just dump JSON into it, basically. So we could just create a giant array of all of the mods and patches we found, give them a timestamp, and then use that to do our data crunching on. That would be the easy solution, and I think that might actually be the best solution, just because it's simple, it's not overcomplicated, and it theoretically should just work. Big if. I'm a little bit worried how that's going to work at some point if you have like 100 or 10,000 logs that mention like one mod. Like how quick is it going to find all of the results for that one mod? But that's just a question of putting the appropriate indices on it, I guess. So I think I'm going to not use Mongoose this time, because Mongoose in TypeScript is kind of a pain in the pita anyway. And work with like pure Mongo, which means that I need MongoDB wrapper. It is the official MongoDB driver. Beautiful. End users. I'm definitely an end user. Pretty sure we're going to need the API documentation. It's just MongoDB. Right. Fair enough. Let's open a local. It's going to be in Huxlip. npm at MongoDB. I think the add keyword was originally added by Yarn, which is really useful because you'd always have to do npm install, and then for some reason you'd have to manually give the flag to save it, as if you'd ever install anything without wanting to save it in your package file. Just no, doesn't happen. And add does both of these things together. Anyway, not particularly interesting. Sorry about that. We're going to need MongoDB from Mongo. No? There we go. And then you can install the types for that as well. Sure. We're going to need a Mongo connection. So let's say we have connection. That's going to be MongoDB connection. Oh, let's create one first, and then we'll find out soon enough what it is. So the URI is now just Mongo, unless I'm very much mistaken. Callback, client options, and this is going to be logs, because the after the slash is like the collection that you want to use, if I remember correctly. We'll find out soon enough. What does this give us? This gives us a promise of a Mongo client. All right, so we've created a global that is the connection. The first time we use it, we're just going to check, or every time we're going to use it, we're going to check. Mongo is always such a weird name to me. Yeah. It's led to some awkward conversations with some of my my office colleagues as well. Because most of them have no idea about programming and anything, and they're just talking like, why do you keep calling them Mongols? And it's like, no, it's not Mongols, it's Mongo. I did occasionally call them Mongols as well, because it's kind of Mongo can be very obtuse. But yeah. So if we don't have a connection yet, try to connect. And then connection is going to be MongoDB connect Mongo logs. We may have to give. Why are you not working? Because you need to be awaited. We may have to set a port here, which I think is 2701, but not sure if it defaults to that or what it will do. You know, I don't think I've ever actually used vanilla Mongo. So we're going to find out together. Quick start. It's awesome. Yeah, okay, so this is handled on our... Oh, it's close. 27017. Hmm. Right. Sorry for that. I'm just quickly thinking about how I can make it easier for myself on testing this stuff because I don't want to reboot the image every time I make a change here. So first, but first let's do the what we were busy with. So let's define our connection string. So this is basically just going to be Mongo. That should theoretically work. Right. Then, to make sure that we don't constantly have to fix our like update whenever we make a change here, we can declare our source folder to be a volume. And if it's a volume, then it will copy whatever is on the host system at that link. So we can say volumes and I always forget the syntax from this one as well. I think it's the host system first, so that would be actually source to app source, maybe? Find out soon enough. It will give us an error if it doesn't work. Seems to have worked. Alright, so essentially if we now make any changes here, so we add a file for example, that should be reflected on, yeah, the client as well. I did it in one. I think that's the first time I've managed. And the same way, the other way around. So any changes we make there is reflected there and back and forth. Good. Yeah, I'm going to need a global installation of TypeScript there as well. TypeScript global. No. No, I just need to have the depth dependencies installed here. No. Alright, that was quick. Do we not already have a TypeScript file here? It is config. Yeah, but we just never copied it. You know what? Just add everything. It's a tiny bit overkill, but makes life easier. Oh, If we do that, we do need to give it a docker ignore. So that we don't end up copying node modules, because what we have now is also a copy of node modules, I think. Yeah, that's not necessarily what we want. It doesn't matter much in this case, but it just takes everything, makes it last longer and be slower and be crap. Right. Can we detach you? What was detaching again? Is it that? It's that one, right? Haven't done this in a while. You're gone, the fetcher is gone. We were working on the database. If we make some changes to you now. Yeah, okay, that's working. So TypeScript is auto compiling in the background, and we can also still give our own commands if we want to, which is nice. Nice. Sure, give me an error. I know that you will work anyway. Dump. So this. Yeah. This should just connect. No, cannot find that module. Why not? What have we got? Oh yeah, it's DB. The current server discovery and monitoring engine is deprecated. Yeah. Yeah, updating a resume is a pain in the ass. I'm also doing it at the moment a lot because well, I'm in the last phase of my my promotion, my PhD project. Probably will have some delays, but I still need to start looking for a new paid job. I don't even really know what I want to do yet. So you have I'm looking at a couple of different fields, and then you need to have like a different CV with like a different approach and different focus for each of the fields. So I have like 3 or 4 different versions. I've given up on trying to do Dutch versions of my CV. I just figured like, okay, any company I want to work with has to be international enough that they'll just accept an English language CV. I might have to revisit that methodology at some point, but it's terrible. I talked about it I think yesterday as well, that you just have your working language, and whether that's English or Dutch or German or whatever, that's the way, the language you work in and that you understand stuff in. And then if somebody's and then if you have to translate it, then you suddenly don't know all of the terms and stuff. It's like talking about programming. I don't think anybody is talking about like asynchrone functies or so. It's like it's almost the same as the English, but does anybody do that? I don't know. Maybe I'm just not talking enough with Dutch people. But which field are you? Because you were in game development. Are you switching to something else, or are you going back to it, or? Okay. Instructor teacher for programming. I don't know about that. No, sorry. I'm in my thought progress. I was thinking because we're desperately looking for programmers at university, but it's these are like academic programmers. You get paid shit. The idea is that you have to be very happy that you're in an academic institution, and that kind of has to be your calling, because everybody else leaves after a year or two because you get paid shit. So I was thinking about like, are they looking for people in teaching positions? Because usually they are, but I think that is one of the few fields that it's not such a huge problem actually, because quite a few people like teaching about that. But I don't know. But I mean, there's generally just a giant shortage of programmers still, right? In the entirety of Western Europe, at least. So should be. It should. People should want you, I guess, at least. Hmm. Yeah, that might be more of an issue. Could always be a freelancer. Yeah. We have loads of experts in various fields come by and give like extra courses for PhDs and stuff, and interested students. It's usually stuff about motivation and building your personal brand and all that kind of jazz, which always annoys me to no end. I would love to go to some proper programmer courses. Yeah, that's generally how it works. Once you're in, you're in, and then you're on the list, and people know you, and they sort of trust you. It gets much easier to get back in. That's always the case with everything. I mean, that's how I rolled into academia in the first place. I was a student assistant, and I had been basically trying to get a student assistant job for years. And once I got in with one professor, then suddenly everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you already have a student assistant, right? I have some work for them," and I suddenly got a lot of work and a lot of interesting research projects, and I decided like, okay, let's keep doing that for a while. That was my first mistake. I'm slightly confused about why it appears to be holding it open. Maybe I need to close it again, and then it will quit gracefully. Yeah. Okay, so it's just staying open because I've still got an open connection, and if I close the connection again, then the test appears actually quits, which is fine. I can live with that. Is there no using keyword in? It's a good question. There's probably a package that does it. Maybe there's a with? I think there's a with. In keyword abstract. No, it's kind of hard to search for this as well. I don't know. I think I've seen it with I've seen the construct before, but I'm wondering if I've seen it in TypeScript or Python. There's a with. Yeah, that's just giving me a bunch of other stuff again. I don't really know how to start looking for that, to be honest. Don't know if there's something like that. Probably there is, but... Okay, then. So they're using callbacks, but the idea is that you can then use client DB. Yeah. Any senses in the future type of respect? No, probably not. They like to keep things vanilla. It took them forever to even get the no propagation in there. It's like, given the propensity of JSON data in TypeScript, where you can just use the period to go through objects, not having a no propagation operator was just terrible. So just having access to that already made me very, very, very happy. Let's call this a client, because apparently that's a client and not a connection. Sure. The database can be constant, db is client, db, and the db is logs, whatever. It doesn't really matter what name it is. We can have a collection on that. So we want to, we will have a number of collections. I think for now, all we want to do is just dump everything we receive into a database. And when I say everything, I mean the mods used and the patches used, because I don't really care about all the other stuff at the moment. So what I want is for each mod in log mods. No, we need to get the collection for the mods first. So const mod collection equals db collection mods. And I think we need to await that. Or is this just has no effect on this expression? Please tell me you have a synchronous version or... Okay. So if I don't give you a callback, you're just going to default to a synchronous? Is that what I'm seeing here? because the callback is also just for collection and stuff. Yeah, okay. I'm hoping this will work. I'm not sure. We'll find out soon enough. Oh, for fuck's sake. Let's be good. Let's do it with a callback. I don't like it, but this is... But then we can basically parallelize this. Parallelize this. Okay, with mod logs, then we should be able to just say collection. No, I would have thought we could push into this. Apparently, that is not how things work. Wait, this is exactly what I just did, isn't it? You get a collection. Well, I did it with a callback, but still. And here they're doing a find operation, but what else? Oh. Push? No. Add? There is 1, 2 things to insert. Also insert many. That's probably better. And the docs can just be JSON objects, so then we don't need to do this anymore. Insert many, basically mods. No, please. Doc mods. Ta-da! Maybe. How are we going to test this? I had some testing code somewhere. Did I delete that? Oh gosh, I deleted that again. Yippee. I should stop deleting testing code. Okay. We're going to just wipe our database at some point anyway, so we will fill it with garbage for now, and then when we are reasonably confident it's working fairly okay, we'll wipe it and then start again. So I'm just going to write a quick function here that will test things. Okay, we want to read from the file system. Can I not do that in a function? Interesting. Never knew that. What else? Quick and dirty. Read file, and we want to be in just any of these. Don't really care. Copy relative path. Almost. This is not promisified, but this one is. Then we want to parse it and then dump it. I'm pretty sure this is what we, yeah, that just takes the raw string and returns a log parse. Why are you complaining? Turn down the global promise type. Yeah, obviously. And then this will do our stuff. Right, okay. Back to the database. And any errors you receive, please show them to me. You need to provide an encoding, otherwise it reads it as a buffer. Okay. So this is the little thing that I added at the end and I didn't actually properly test, is this one. Apparently this is not a recognized format. So I think I'll just comment it out for now, and we need to figure out which format, if any, is actually used in the log files. So this is some sort of format. I'm pretty sure it's a simple format as well, because I've seen this before. So it probably has some standard code, but I just need to look it up. And I don't really care right now. Can't see anything happening because I didn't turn any logging on and I didn't add any logging myself. But presumably it has now dumped a lot of shit into the database. I also can't see when it's done because I haven't closed the connection. Yes, I'm so amazing. Yes, it's not implicit. I want it to be any. Trust me. Because it's not going to be anything, really. Ooh. Cannot use a session that has ended. Unhandled promise rejection. Oh gosh, this again. Put you there. It's because this doesn't return anything, and then it automatically evaluates this one. It doesn't wait until the stuff before it has happened. So then you need to return something from your catch, and then this will work again. It took me forever to find that out the first time. At least now I know what's going wrong. That helps. Apparently there's something else still going on though. Yeah, because dump doesn't return anything either. I'll cheat a tiny little bit. Yeah, now we're not waiting until we're done using it. Very tempted to just never close you. Bad practice. Don't care. I really do need to add logging to it. Logs Mongo. Yeah, so it's received some connections, ended some connections, so that's something at least. We can execute on Mongo bash. That's a new one. You have that shell? This is... Well, that still works at least. Insert many does return a promise. Then why does the fuck does this not return a promise? I guess because it's near instantaneous anyway. What ifs? Just some quick and dirty output. This is going to have a ton of thingies now. Right, I'm gonna need to execute this or something, right? Why is it giving me all this jazz? Wait, that's a readable stream? Does that mean I can... No, it doesn't stay open, right? Does it actually allow me to like react to new objects being put in the database. That would be cool. Have to look at that at some point. Don't really care right now though. I guess I can just use for each, but why can't I just map them or just get a here? There we go, to array. Much simpler. We have a database with mods and assemblies. Whoop-de-doo. The reason I normally always use Mongoose is because I'm used to SQL or SQL databases, because that's what I grew up with. So having stuff like this, where you have a single mod entry which then has several assembly children, bothers me. For one thing, because it's like I don't know, it's an asymmetric kind of thing. Like, why there should just be a table assemblies, and then they should link to the mod they belong to, or the other way around. Like you have another table with the links in between them, or whatever. This should be linked somehow, not in the same object. And that's also because each mod can have multiple assemblies, but assemblies can also appear in multiple mods. So you have a many-to-many relationship. Now, truth be told, that is not strictly speaking the same assembly. It may be a copy of exactly the same assembly, but it doesn't have to be. So in that perspective, these are separate, but to the sense that like there's going to be dozens of mods in here using Hugslip, for example, they're mostly going to be the same copy of Hugslip, but they'll show up for each mod separately. I think I will leave it, and we'll have to do some smart work in the querying to work around that fact. Not super happy with this. Well. What I do want in each of these is I want to have a an ID for the log. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an MD5 hash from that again. From JSON stringify log. I'm assuming I can't take an MD5 of an object, right? No, didn't think so. So that gives us some more or less unique identifier for this particular log file. I don't particularly care that like I'm never going to store the actual log files, but I do want to know which mods belong together, so where are they used. Just because it might be important later. And I do want that timestamp in there. We'll have to fix that one so that it gets parsed better. These I want to include for all of them that information, so we're going to have to map them and say mod, mod return. I'm going to do some clever object destructuring to add this stuff back in, but we can add the this is the log ID, timestamp, and whatever was in the original mod. That will insert them into the collection, and I believe that that will work. I have faith. We're going to do the same trick for several other collections. So we've got mods, patches, and might as well do Harmony instances. Apparently that has the wrong type. Yeah, that makes more sense. This is a patch. Oh. And this is a Harmony instance. Alright, that will dump all of our stuff into the database, and then we can add a little bit of logging here for now. Probably not going to use it all that often, but mods mods inserted. Okay. For some reason, it inserted 500 or almost 600 patches quicker than it did the instances or the mods, which is interesting, but doesn't matter terribly much. So you can also see that this is sort of the advantage of doing this with the callback interface and basically parallelizing it, because these three all run at once, and then the logging actually waits until the insert operation is done. And you can see that these are not in the order that I defined them in, so it's possible that one finishes before the other, which is nice. Gets a little bit complicated when you want to do something when all three of them are finished, though, which is kind of what we want to do with closing the connection. Which is where you would normally, yeah, that's where promises could come in handy, because you could wait for all of the promises to finish. You could use async await as well to signal when the insertion operations are finished. But I guess for now we'll just leave it like this. It's not a disaster that the connection is not closed, I think. And if we have some sort of process that stays open, I was going to say, then it doesn't matter anyway, because we can just keep the process open and keep the one connection open. But if we're going to run this in some sort of hourly or daily script, then we probably don't want to do that. Yeah. All right. So we've got this stuff in the database. I'm annoyed that I can't seem to get into Mongo. I should just be able to... Yeah, so docker compose exec Mongo and then some sort of shell. Normally this one works at least. But apparently today it doesn't want to do that. It is up because we checked that. Is there an option I'm forgetting? Is there like a direct attach or something? No idea. I've done this before, so I'm a little bit annoyed that it doesn't seem to be working now. Interesting. I would like to have an overview of what's going on with the just be able to mess around on the command line for Mongo and look at our database. Because this won't work. Is it Mongo C or Mongo? No, because we don't have that installed here. Why though? Sorry, this really bothers me. Oh well. Doesn't matter. Let's add a tiny user interface kind of thing. So we're gonna create a front end for this. Yeah, we won't need you guys for a while, so. I think the easiest way to serve that would be to just use an image for Nginx, and is that true? No, let's just use Node. That's going to be much easier. I was thinking about like, how do we want to make the website? Do we want to use like I've been playing around with Vue a little bit, like components and stuff on that end. But then I need to make an API to actually get the data anyway. So it might be easier to just use Node and a templating engine, or Node and like Express and a templating engine. Because then we can directly talk with Mongo on the database side, which is nice. Right. I'm not aware what the current mean stack generator state of mean stacks and generators and thing is. So generator mean, it is not looking like it's terribly recent or well maintained. Let's see what Express has to say about it. It's not as minimalist as you guys would have us believe, to be honest. But fair enough. So mean stands for Mongo, Express. The A is... I ought to know this. The N is Node. I want to say Apache, but that's obviously not it. Is it? No. I don't believe that I have to look this up. Angular, right. Yeah, but we're not doing that. Screw that. That's why nobody's using it anymore, because it's Angular in there. That's why I wouldn't find anything. Angular is kind of lost favor. Right. Yeah, but you have a client, right, to do stuff? Yeah, I don't care about all of this. I'm not going to... Yeah, there we go. The generator. Interesting. Quickly generate an application skeleton. For earlier Node versions, install the application generator as a global npm package and launch it. Right. Okay, but we should be able to do this then. Wow, that was quick. Did I still have that installed again? No, it was downloading and installing. Okay, I'm impressed. The default view engine will not be Jade in future releases. Use Vue.jade or help for additional options. Okay, what would it be? I don't particularly care anyway. Okay, right. That has given us a bunch of boilerplate in our front end package. So it's installed or it's created a package JSON with the start script for it. So in bin www is all of the boilerplate to start a basic HTTP server with Express listening on it. And then in the app, and this is JavaScript. I don't like it being JavaScript, but I don't know if that is an option. To use TypeScript. I know that there's a separate TypeScript generator because I've used it in the past, I think. And it's honestly also not that hard to set up TypeScript for this, but let's skip it for now. This is all the other boilerplate that you need for Express. I'm always annoyed whenever I install Express. It's like, this is a lightweight thing that is supposed to be simple. Why do you have like the most basic things, such as like a cookie parser and JSON parsing and stuff like that? Why does that all need to be set up separately? At least they've got the JSON parser back into the Express like family environment, whatever, because that used to be a separate thing as well. Static as well. You'd have to like install them separately, even though everybody always needed to use those kind of things. It's really annoying. Can we serve from you? Is that a thing? No, didn't think so. Alright, yeah, we can just serve that. We don't have to deal with TypeScript recompiling, so just serving that, and that's automatically like a. So it's just npm start. Ooh, if only. Module not found. I have to do an npm install. Are you kidding me? Well, that's scary. Right, so can I do something about this? Oh goody, manual review. I love that. So what is the problem here? Did I have a cached version of Express or something, and is it then using an ancient version of the libraries? This 4.16.1. What were we looking at? What is the current version? 4.17.1. Hey Corliss, thanks for the follow. This is where me being a noob sticks out again. I don't actually know how to force it to upgrade this kind of stuff. I thought it was just update. But apparently that's not. Because it's not actually updating anything, even though I did tell it to update. So what do I need to do? No? And also, there's always a nuclear option. Just remove node modules. What have you given me now? Wait, wrong one. That one. Yeah, you've reverted me to the... For fuck's sake. I'm not allowed to manually do this, right? That's the problem. That's going to be the problem. So if I do it like this, it will work. No, it won't. Ah. Asshole. Alright. You do that. You do that. I'm a little bit scary about that one because that's a major version bump. We're going to go even more nuclear this time. Get rid of node modules. Get rid of the package JSON lock. Package lock. And that should now actually install the things we want. Express doesn't have vulnerabilities anymore. It's back. Oh dear. Let's see what they tell us to do. Yeah, upgrade to version 4.11, 1.11 or higher. How am I actually going to do that when Jade is requiring all of these things? I mean, this is not my dependency, this is a sub-dependency, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I'm starting to understand why Jade is not going to be used anymore in future releases of Express. Wait, was that not a command? Did we not add that before? That one works at least. Options there, yeah, their defaults the way we have now. Can we use handlebars? I think handlebars is kind of the same thing, but different. Simpler. We shouldn't need terribly. I'm confused. Isn't Pug the same thing as Jade these days? Oh gosh. Right. First off, let's go nuclear on this entire folder and start over. No, doesn't do that. Okay, fair enough. Then we will use handlebars, because I think that's kind of the same approach, simple, not too opinionated. And we'll use that there as well. Then I do actually want a CSS profiler, preprocessor as well, and I've used SAS with some success in the past. And we want that to be in front end. Right, we now have a front end folder again, which hopefully this time does not require Jade and therefore is not going to give us a bunch of critical security warnings. Because honestly, I cannot believe that is still the default. Oh yeah, SAS needs to actually... Ah, for fuck's sake. Does anybody know, is there like a newer generator or something? Am I just doing something wrong? Is like the entirety of Express deprecated? What the hell? Why is the generator giving me all kinds of options that actually have terrible security risks? I don't particularly care about that. That, however... Okay, so this is basically saying handlebars is shit, don't use it. Is that what you're saying here? I've got to use some kind of view engine. Right. What are you telling me to use? Pug. Isn't... Or is Jade deprecated for Pug? Or is it the other way around? Is that why I was just being terrible? I'll just do this again. Let's use Jade this time. Or Pug. Sorry, not Jade. Pug. 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 Same thing. Well, that's a hell of a lot quicker, at least. Ooh, it's using fancy betas. Even though there's a later... This is a good start. No longer maintained. Not recommended for usage. Due to the number of issues. I had a bit of like a Wikipedia deep dive this afternoon, or this morning actually, into like known attacks on NPM packages. And there's been a couple of instances where a package author from a fairly popular package on NPM, so then you're quickly going towards the tens of thousands, if not millions of downloads weekly, have decided to abandon a package and just given over control to somebody else. And I mean, that happens a lot. But in this case, they gave control to somebody who was obviously not, like, he had no... like no GitHub profile of his own. Like he had a couple of forks in there, but none of his own creations. And just like the complete newbie. So this guy just gave it away because the other guy asked if he could have control of it, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Well, I'll tell you why not. Because the new guy decided to quickly add an attack vector, because this package was a dependency for a bunch of Bitcoin apps and wallets, kind of things like that. And he added a bit of obfuscated code that would only run if one of those particular dependencies was actually present, and then it would try to steal your passwords. It took like the community a couple of months to figure it out, and this is with a popular package, that something was going on. I mean, it's probably just his ineptitude or bad luck that he didn't manage to steal more and that it wasn't major news. But it's kind of scary how easily a bad dependency can enter your dependency chain, especially for a lot of programmers. Like, I also just assume that if it's an npm, if it's popular, then it must be good. I mean, that's the extent of the vetting I do, and I think that goes for most people who are not like deeply in a corporate structure. There was a large discussion there about what whose responsibility is that? Is it the responsibility of the author of the package to vet a new author? And some people are saying like, yes, this is common courtesy. This is the like the ground level of open source software, is that you take responsibility for the stuff you put out there, even if you put it out there for free, and even if you put it out there with like an MIT license with the standard disclaimer, like this package is not fit for purpose, and like whatever happens, it's not my fault. And other people are saying like, yeah, I mean, it's got the disclaimer on it. You should be checking your dependencies. And I'm a little bit skeptical about that. I think he should have done due diligence. I think he should have looked a little bit closer. It's never entirely possible to completely vet people that take over your package. But I mean, even if you've put an MIT license on it, you are aware that your package is used by millions of installations. So just handing it over to somebody you have no connection with seems like a stupid idea. And you also can't expect users to vet not only your package, but also your package's dependencies, all of them. Because, I mean, node modules is a node in general is called a black hole for a reason. I've just installed Express. That's the only thing I installed. And Express and its dependencies installed like all of this crap. Sure. Actually, that's not true. I'm looking in the wrong place. Watch this one be even bigger. Yeah, it's even more. Like, this is all for Express, which calls itself a lightweight framework. Let's not forget that. Yeah? That's what, 5, 6, 7. I can probably easier to find it here. So let's discount bin and types, because those are special ones. That is 267? Yeah, 267 packages were installed from the one. That's not light. It's 30 megabytes of code of JavaScript. I'm sure most of it is not used because it's source code and it's actually using Minified versions or whatever. But still, it's ridiculous. I'm not going to vet all that. I mean, unless I work at some kind of bank and I have super security measures and dozens of people helping me vet all of that, you're not going to do that. So to expect people to do that is just not going to happen. Sorry, I'm just randomly clicking buttons now for some reason. Anyway, segue finished. We seem to not have any critical vulnerability risks anymore using Pug instead of Jade. Apparently I had it the wrong way around, the name change. If anybody wants to give Zloy Rock a good job, then there you go. He's advertising. Sure. Let's actually get started on doing like a little front end. So I was talking about what Express actually is. It set up this listener. You can define routes. And so you define the little routers that respond to a certain page, and then you can also nest them so that you have one main router for like your user area and another router for the mods area, whatever. We'll probably use that a little bit as well. Yeah, these are very minimalistic examples, so it's not absolutely great. You have views, which are the POC files, which are basically just templates, and yeah, not much to say about that. We'll get into them a little bit later on. And then this is like your static stuff. There's not really anything there right now. It's like your static assets, so your style sheets, your images, the compiled JavaScript, etc. All right. We should be able to serve this now so that we can have a live preview of it. npm start. Sure. You can have access to everything you want. And I'm used to that giving me some output, but apparently that's not the way it works anymore. And you listen on 3000. Yep, there we go. I'm just going to keep this on my second screen for now. When I do something interesting on it, I'll try and place it next to the code so that we can look at it together. No, I don't want any more extensions right now. Okay. Well, let's just close everything and start from a clean slate. Talking, difficult talking. All right, we want to have an index that goes to the various pages for some other stuff. Maybe put some stuff in there. We can get rid of the users because we're never going to use that. And then we also need to get rid of the one here. And here. I do need to restart this when I make changes, because otherwise it's not going to update. So I'm going to need to do nodemon, I guess. I'm not sure if I have that installed. Yeah, and then it says just listening on server.js, but I want to listen on more shit. So what nodemon is it listens to changes and then restarts your app, and you can also set it up so that when your app crashes, it restarts it as well. So it's like a node process monitor kind of thing, and it's handy during development, also during production, to make sure that it keeps running, even if it goes down for some weird reason or another. Okay. So if we set up the extension to look for and the path, then we can just make it watch for the JavaScript and the source file or whatever. Just everything. Everything. So basically you just watch this, and then what we actually want to run is bin www. Is it really that easy? I think it is. Yeah, seems to be. So that started it, and now if we make any changes in any of this stuff, it's going to restart it. Goodie! That works. Alright, we want to create a router for the mods. So it's basically the same kind of thing, and we're going to have a couple of first of all, this is going to be asyncs. This is going to be our list, and we'll use some different view pages. I'm just going to copy this a couple of times for the different functions that we'll have. So we have a list, we'll have a detail maybe, I guess, at some point. I guess that's kind of it, isn't it? Yeah, probably. Okay, so the list can just be the front page basically, so it doesn't need to have anything behind it. And the detail will have an ID of the mod. So in this case, that will just be a mod name. This just sets up a parameter in the that we can use to catch stuff, but we'll get there in a sec. So for the list, we want to get from our database, and we need to make a database connection kind of thing. Let's copy the stuff we already had for Huxley. It's kind of this stuff again. That wasn't terribly interesting, to be honest. Right. Const Mongo is require Mongo. And I don't think we actually have Mongo though, do we? Do we? No, we don't. Stop lying to me. Okay. Yeah, and we don't actually use types in here, which is a shame, but okay, fair enough. So this is what we'll create a connection here. What was it again? Mongo connect Mongo URL, and then it's going to complain about use new. No, there was something. It'll complain soon enough. And export module exports equals client, so that we can import this just as a client, and then that should work. It's like the default export kind of thing. We are going to need to await that, to be honest, though, because this is now not. Because this is going to be. Oh, this is actually a client. I'm so confused. Don't we need to await that? Oh well, whatever. Not doing it there either. We're awaiting the collections for some reason though. What else? Okay, we can, so don't use var. Get the client now by saying require a database. And because this is an external file, and we can have shared dependencies, and we'll use the same client. I did this in the past, I always used to do this wrong, and create like 10 connections to the same database. The only reason I found out is because I was using a managed online database on like the Mongo thingy. I always forget what it's called. And it kept spamming me with emails like, you have too many concurrent connections. Please do something about that. Oops, never noticed that before. But to be fair, it was still working just fine. And I think, honestly, my solution at that point, because I was really old code, was to basically send all of those emails to my spam box. So it's probably still sending them. That was easier than actually changing the code. Anyway, client collection, this is mods. And we want to find basically any, don't really care. This is not what I expected to see there. What is that predicate kind of thing? Shouldn't that just be an option where I can say like, I don't know, name is whatever name I say it should be, so Huckslip or something. Apparently that works. Oh well. Doesn't matter. Find to array. And then render. This view will be mods list, and we'll give it the list of mods to work with. Alright. We need to actually hook that up to the main router, and then it will start giving us error messages if something is wrong as well, which I'm pretty sure it will be. Because so far we haven't actually used it yet. Mods router equal require routes mods. Still loading without issues. Interesting. Didn't expect that. And then we'll use that on like the relative path mods. So this is still the default front page. If you now go to mods, we will get an error. DB open is not a function. Why did I do that? I'm awaiting the client. That's not it. So the only difference here is that I didn't use the callback API. This is get a MongoDB collection. This is on a database, and this is a database. Is it? That returns a database. Yeah. My brain is starting to go mushy again. Alright, I'm not going to keep working with callbacks. I hate callbacks, they're stupid and should go away. So we're just going to quickly see if there's a promise AP, and I'm sure there is. Wait, what? Am I just being an idiot? Yo! Hi there, medium rare ice cream Jeff. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to me being stumped at silly mistakes and... Right, so they're basically telling me that I'm an idiot and that these are promises already. What I'm failing to see is why do we have that? Why it worked here and why the other stuff isn't working. Because this is saying db open is not a function. Wait, am I being an idiot? Do I still have to open a database first? I'm so sorry. No, you are doing that. You are saying that I only have a collection here. So that would assume that this is already... So then I would have to do logs there. Does that then work? How many? Yeah, you also only have one. Bah. Oh, come on, give me a clean stream. Why don't you control? This always happens to me. Like 2-3 hours into the stream, I get some kind of silly problem that I should be able to fix in like 5 minutes because it's obvious, and then it takes me an hour, and I'm somehow still elated when I finally manage to fix it. But it's just stupid. It is very stupid. Right. It's still complaining about DB open. So what if we just like force it to do this and use the same stuff we used here? Because I don't understand why. Because here we have a client first, which is then a Mongo client. This returns a Mongo client. Yeah. And then from the client, we get a database. When we try to do it in our JavaScript file, the same package, wait, it is giving us IntelliSense for the parameters for the DB name. It's just telling us that DB is not itself an option. What the Yeah, client DB is not a function. Okay, okay. Sure. Why not though? Sounds like typical design with lab languages. Yeah, they do tend to be terrible. Every single fucking one of them. Sorry. Yeah, that's kind of popular these days, Adolf. You've got to be fucking kidding me. Apparently I was using some kind of silly wrapper around it or something. Right. So this is returning a client. Const db is client db logs. Is this returning a promise? No, that's just returning a db. And then you can return db. And then we should actually have a working database connection. Oh wonder it never works. I mean, many of the new games use like Ceph or WebKit for the UIs. I don't know what Ceph is, to be honest. But yeah. It is much easier to work with, Adolf. Honestly. I mean, if you're not after really fancy 3D effects or something, then, and even that you could do in like a web environment. But I guess that. Oh right, yeah, okay, yeah. I've looked at it myself for my RimWorld mods because, for example, the like the research tree mod and like the relations mod, where you're moving pawns around in like a what is it? The one is a force-directed graph, and the other is like a Tsukuyomi representation or whatever. That would be much easier to do if I could use JavaScript libraries, because they already exist. And I mean, there are some C# libraries that exist, but they're either a couple of versions of C# ahead or behind of what Unity is using. So I need to do a lot of manual editing and like fixing it up and making it work, which I never really got around to. So I tried to implement it myself, which never really worked properly. And just in general, UI is much easier with web languages. That's again why I did the standalone mod manager with Electron, which is, I mean, the entire existence of Electron is ridiculous when you think about it, because this is 100 megabyte executable with like a gigabyte of RAM consumption just to show me a website, which I mean, it has some stuff behind it, but Electron is ridiculously resource intensive for what it is. But on the other hand, most people can run a computer where Chrome can have 3 or 4 tabs open, so then Electron isn't so terrible anymore, and it's much easier to develop on, especially if you're used to web interface programming. And I think that's like most UI programmers these days, I think are web UI programmers. I mean, I'm saying that as somebody who's not actually in the business, but that's my perception of it. I don't know. By the way, Peasant, welcome to the stream. Nice to see you here. Yeah, okay, but yeah. I think the number of like there's a lot of enterprise programming, which is usually to a larger extent it's like backend stuff, so it's enterprise software and stuff. And I mean, you can call that a UI, but yeah. Then you've got like your traditional software, but I think most like end user oriented user interfaces these days, so what most programmers would be working on is web, isn't it? Or maybe I'm just, I don't know, a millennial or something. Am I a millennial? I never know. Depends on the definition. Anyway, this should now give us a different set of errors. Ooh. Await is only valid in an async function. Yeah, can't await there. So you are now promise. Okay. What can I do about this? What can I do about this? Not terribly much. I can also make this a promise. Then client. So at this point, this is actually a Mongo client. And then now this is a promise for a database. I export the database, and then I just need to make sure that I actually await it here. Any middle-sized companies often use web. Yes, I hate working on it. But do you do any UI, Erdo? Like I don't think you've ever done user interface in any of your mods, have you? And I've heard you complain about it a couple of times, I think. You have to need to in your work. You don't want to. Yeah. Yeah, I've also given up taking time to make mod settings look good. Got a Mongo server selection error. Interesting. Yeah, obviously. Because this is not actually running inside. If we want to do that, then this is not running inside a Docker container, so it doesn't actually have a link with this Docker, this Mongo image. So we would either need to expose the port it uses, or run it as a container itself, which we can do. I'm just wondering if it's not easier to just keep it as a separate thing for now and expose Mongo. And let's do that for now. Yeah, this is another one of those things. I want port 80 here. No, 27017 and 27017. That should theoretically do what I want it to do, I think. And then we need to change the database here to use localhost instead. And we'll need to restart take Mongo down. Hey. Am I not? Oh, I'm apparently not allowed to take containers down selectively. Oh well. And I always forget if I have to rebuild it just for Docker file changes, but screw it. This should be easy enough. Right, Mongo is now listening on all IP addresses. Actually, this shouldn't be. This should be on localhost only. If we were actually going to deploy this, I'm behind the firewall anyway, so it doesn't matter right now. And I should now be able to connect to it using localhost. Let's do something. There we go. This is what I wanted to see. Now it's actually complaining about not being able to find the view, which is entirely correct. We're getting somewhere. We'll add a mods folder here, and we'll add a list pug. So we have an overall layout pug file, and in that we can define blocks. And the block in this case is a content. You can also have like header, footer, a sidebar, whatever you can imagine. And then your individual, like your page templates can just say like, okay, we extend layout and we want to put this content in that block. So we're going to do the same sort of thing here. I'm not going to bother too much about the layout. Here we're going to say h1 is, so h1 is just creating an HTML element of h1, basically. And the equals behind it means that we want to type just raw text. It's just not template related. Here, that is just mods. Then we want to, well, for now, let's just start a list. So this is going to be an unordered list. And for mod in mods, we want to have a list element with, in that list element, there's going to be, what is there going to be? Well, it doesn't really matter. For now, let's just put the mod name in there. Theoretically, that should give us a very ugly overview of all the mods we have. Well, sort of. It's not erroring anymore, which is a start. It's also not getting any... Interesting. It's not actually putting anything in there. Let's put you to the side for a little bit. Don't care about you anymore, and I want to see my router, which is this one. So yeah, I am using this spec file, obviously, and I'm rendering a list of mods. Huh. I mean, at the very least, it should be showing us the header here, right? Or am I now? I think I'm doing this the wrong way around. It should be an equals if it is a templating variable. Yeah. And I need to actually await this because that is a promise. This is now returning nothing for me. You can also see it in the log output here. Scared me for a tiny second. The reason for that is that we just took the we took down the database, so we do need to set up a quick volume for that, because otherwise this is going to being problematic. We do want this data to persist. I don't want to link this to a particular location on my file system, so I'm just going to use a named volume. I just need to find the syntax for that. Yeah, so that's just this one. Named volumes must be listed on the top level volumes key. Okay, so that's easy enough. Then the question is just MongoDB data path. I always forget. I think it's just data? Yeah, that one. Okay. Volumes DB data. Good enough. And this is going to be DB data slash db data, right? Data db. Damn it, so close. All right. Let's restart those yet again. Error file Docker composing volume must be a mapping and not an array. I'm sorry. Am I not using the same thing as there? Oh, wait. Yep. Sure. YAML. Let's get rid of all of them. It's telling me that it's using a previous container and giving me a warning about it. So let's just get rid of everything. It's empty now anyway. So this is remove with yes. Oh, I do hope I haven't just removed. Okay, good. I was afraid for a second that I'd like remove the node LTS one, because that takes a while to download again. But it does keep that in cache. Good. Alright, now Mongo stores its data on like a volume managed by Docker somewhere on my computer, don't care where. Which means that we can shut it down, start it back up, and it will still have the data from before. We do need to put our data back in. Exec hux. No autocomplete on that. Bash hux I think was the name of that one. No such service bash. Exec huxlib bash. Order is important. We want to run node this db. Oh yeah, npm run. No. Wait, what? It's not copying over everything I expected it to copy over. I expected it to be the distributed files, the compiled files also to be copied over. But apparently that's not the case. It doesn't matter terribly, because we just need to run TypeScript then. I expected some sort of output there, but okay, sure. The files are there. That's what matters. Node this db. Awesome, we've put stuff in our database. It won't close again because we're not closing the connection properly because we were too lazy to do that. We've now got stuff in our database, so if I now refresh the test website, did I close it? Apparently I closed it. What is it? Welcome to Express. Yes, Express, hi there. Ooh, getting somewhere. Apparently it's not called name. Close enough. Again, that's the benefit of TypeScript, although it wouldn't have mattered in this case, but I would be able to see the typings for it and not make this silly mistake because it would have IntelliSense. In this case, this is in a template anyway, so not going to matter. I'll just have to look at the interface to see what mistake I made. Did I call it mod name? That would be terrible, to be honest. In the parser mod, no, that should have a name, just fine. I called it mod. See, that's wrong. So that probably needs to be changed in the actual parser. Because that means I'm calling it a mod here. Yeah. Can we do something about that now? Not particularly. We would need to empty the database first and then put new stuff in. I can rerun it. Would need to build the grammar first, but that refreshes the grammar, and then I can rerun this, and then it would add some new data in it with the proper usage. But that's going to be at the bottom of the list, so it's still using mod here. Just slightly annoying. Let's rewrite the DB quickly so that it clears out what is there now before we enter stuff. Can I just like wipe this? Yeah, drop database. Bring it. Don't do this at home, kids. Alright, that should have dropped it and then abort it. Let's recompile it. Not to destroy our database this time. Do that again. Goodie. And now we actually get mod names. Whee! Alright. Need to figure out what to do with this and actually make it do something. I'm gonna think about that while walking the dog, because I need to walk our dog. So thank you very much for tuning in. May possibly stream a little bit more tonight if I had some inspiration, but probably not, because well, actually no, it's very unlikely that I'll be streaming, because yeah. Anyway, it's been fun. Thank you very much for hanging out with me, and yeah, made some good progress tonight. That's much better than yesterday, I think. All right, see you guys. Until next time.